Hello and welcome to our next session. I am Jennifer Bergman from Actual Tech Media, here with real IT professionals sharing their real stories with you. Here with me today is Alexandra Hauger. She is in IT systems at Schaefer Hackett, which is a top 100 US accounting firm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. David Kroenke is an IT director at Inkcycle, which is a worldwide leader in printing technology located in Kansas. Also with us today is James Ide. James is located in Michigan. He is an IT and network systems with national telecom deployment, streaming Series XM music into business sites. Thank you all for joining me today on our first ever IT career event. Really excited about this panel discussion. Let's kick this off with David. David, what made you decide to go into IT, and how did you work your way in?
Well, growing up, I was always told that I could do or be whatever I wanted to. Maybe a doctor, but I hated school. So in my early 20s, I found myself married, having small children, and doing construction work. And after a knee surgery, I realized that I kind of needed to find a different path. I did have a few mentors in this, and I started attending classes and learning skills with the idea that I could be pressed to have to prove those skills at any moment. And I actually was able to find an entry-level position, finish off a college degree, get my foot in the door, and so my career was launched.
Great, thank you. That's really impressive. James, over to you with this question. How have you been able to further your IT career to where you are now?
Well, I'd have to say I learned most of my soft skills right off the bat at my first job. It was a very large global company with offices worldwide. So there are always people from the building, from other countries and all around. And that's really where I was meeting people. I'd be setting up meetings and talking with them and really honed in on my skills from that point. As far as my technical skills go, I'd say I really increased on coding because of the way that traditional IT has shifted recently. A lot of things have moved to the cloud and we need to deploy workloads a lot faster. So I learned to code, and from there, it's kind of helped me to deploy these workloads with automation and get moving a lot faster.
And James, just as a follow-up, how have you been able to jump around from company to company? How has that worked for you?
It's worked quite well, actually. That's probably where I've made most of my pay raises. Every time I'd go to a different company, it was a substantial pay increase versus the annual raises that I would get from staying at a company are much, much smaller. So I would say it was definitely beneficial to jump around from company to company, but you don't want to have that on your resume as well. So it is good if you do find a good place to stick with them.
Okay. Alex, over to you with this question. What are the best ways you have found to keep current in technology needed for your accounting firm? Alex, right now you're on mute.
Thank you. When I was new in my career, I would just do random searches for tech articles or browse TechCrunch. But the further along I've gotten into my career, I've realized that only researching relevant content to things that I know that myself and the firm are going to be working towards in the future, researching those topics in particular is definitely key.
And how do you balance your learning with a job at an accounting firm?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as balancing, that is a really hard goal to achieve in IT, but I certainly manage. I found the best method is blocking off an hour every few days on my calendar so that I have time to, set aside for research and learning specifically, especially around times when we are about to begin implementation.
Are there particular busy seasons that you try to stay away from?
Yes, we have busy seasons. So the accounting firm I work for does taxes and personal taxes included. So we have all the tax deadlines that we have to take account for. So, between January and April 15th, without COVID, typically those are our busiest seasons, but those are usually the times where we can get the most done in IT because the accountants are so busy working, that's when, unless something breaks, that's when we have time to plan and, do the things that we don't have time for the rest of the year.
Mhm. So I'm going to do a question and I'm going to do a round to each of you on this one to get your perspective. Each of you has moved to different positions in different companies over the years. What was the biggest reason for your decision to advance to a new opportunity? And how did you prepare yourself for that next opportunity or next move? I'm going to start with you, David.
Well, first of all, I think the biggest push was just wanting to provide for my family and determine where I was going to live and where my kids went to school. But the underlying cause there too is trying to prove what I can do, just show people what I was capable of, and wanting to move into something more challenging.
Yeah, and how did you prep for that?
I just tried to master as many skills as I could. I tried to be an expert on everything, and some of those things were useful and some of them were not. But I just was really trying to prove myself, especially I think after my career transition from construction work to IT. I think I really tried extra hard to to prove that this is something I could do.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a time where you had to go and learn a new topic or a new technology just to
All
keep
the
your foot
time.
in? Mm-hmm.
All the time. But learning things is actually kind of my superpower.
Thank you. Alex, I'll repeat it for you. What was the biggest reason for your decision to advance to a new company? And how did you prepare yourself for that?
Well, I realized, being in the first internal IT department at my former company, after all the building, breaking everything down and rebuilding from scratch, there wasn't much room left to grow. I didn't see a lot of potential for, growth in the technology aspect of that company. So once I realized that my career probably wouldn't grow much more with that company, I realized it was probably time to start looking into other, opportunities. And then as far as preparing for, the next thing, I was still fairly new in my IT career, so I probably could have prepared more, to be quite honest, but I did research the firm. And then after my initial call with the recruiter, I took what I learned from her about the current technologies, tools, and solutions, and I researched the crap out of those beforehand, just so I was prepared. But yeah.
Sounds like you had hit a brick wall at the company where you were, and really, in order to grow, you had to leave.
Yeah, there was really no other choice. The only other positions that were above me were director of IT, and then above that was CAO. And I knew that I was not going to be in either of those roles. And honestly, that boss at the time, he, said without having a college degree that I would never make it in IT. So that was another big reason.
And have you found that to be true?
I found that to be absolutely incorrect. He was not correct at all. Certifications are awesome and relevant, when it comes to IT. Not that there's anything wrong with getting a college degree. Of course, I think that's great, but I don't think that limits, somebody as far as their career. I don't think that that's something that should be considered a limitation.
Thank you. Great. James, over to you. The biggest reason you've moved on to a new company, and how did you prep yourself?
First of all, I really agree with David and Alex there. Great reasons, of course. And I've had a similar experience. I was in a help desk position in my first job. And like Alex, I got to a point where I felt like that was as far as I could really take it. And another big motivator, of course, was money. As in this career and growing a family, you tend to need more money after a certain amount of time. So I felt like it was time for me to go as well. As far as preparing for that, I did a lot of learning on the job and also a lot of learning off the job. I maintain a personal cloud server at home. I run it on Docker so I could learn about containerization. Back to my coding, I learned how to automate a lot of the backups for backing up the databases to that cloud, and just other things along that line sort of kept me up to date and kept my skills fresh with things that I may have not been learning on the job. So that's really sort of how I progressed from there.
Nice, thank you. And I want to again thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules for being here with me. And I'm on to our last question. And again, this is going to be a round circle one. I'm going to start with James. We're going to go back to you, James. So what advice do you have for our people on this event today, IT professionals trying to advance their career?
I'd say one of the most important things is to keep a good work-life balance. It's important to be a good employee, but at the same time, you don't want to give too much of your time to a company who's not going to give you that same amount of respect back. You really need a career to have the money to live your life and to have the time to live your life. And if you don't have the time to live your life, then the money doesn't really matter either, other than taking care of your family, of course. Also, don't be afraid of failure. I failed many times, especially on my first position, and those failure points were what I grew from most as far as learning and moving forward in the field. So really, don't be afraid of failure. Being let go from a job even could be another opportunity as well. So those are all good things to keep in mind when first entering this field.
Yeah, could be a blessing in disguise to move yourself further.
Very true. Yeah.
Yep. And I think what you were saying with the pandemic is made us realize the importance of that work-life balance. And
so true.
Yep. So thank you. David, what advice do you have for our audience today?
I love James's answer on that one. And my answer kind of meshes with that. And that is that I believe everybody has a unique set of skills. And so if you can figure out what it is that you're really good at, that you like doing, then that just will add forever to your quality of life. And so don't be afraid to be a little flexible and versatile to discover your skills and the position that's really a good fit for you. There's just no point in being miserable because you haven't found what you're good at.
Right. Keep moving along. Keep moving along. Thank you, David. And Alex, over to you. What is the advice you would like to share?
James and David both had incredibly great points. And to add to that, my advice would be around interviewing. I've found recently that in interviews, never ever dismiss your personality. You should always make that shine through when you're interviewing. Companies nowadays, more than ever, seem to be taking personality into account, especially in roles like IT. That's actually what got me the job, of course, with technical skills, but being a personable human being in IT especially, it's not as rare as it used to be, but it's also not as frequent. I would say that, be yourself in an interview and, at least you'll stand out. But as, David and James both said, don't be afraid to fail. Failure can absolutely always be.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. We are taking questions in the chat box and we will be getting back to you. So feel free, if you have further questions for David, Alex, or James, to please put them in the chat box and we'll be getting back to you. Thank you all, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.